In June 1944, these sleepy country lanes were awakened by the deafening noise of men and machinery as the Allies prepared for their invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. Not only hundreds of thousands of men, but also tens of thousands of vehicles would need to be shipped across the Channel to Normandy.
And we're here today in Dorset, where roughly 70 to 80 genuine World War II vehicles have come to form what could be the last convoy of its kind to commemorate events in this village 78 years ago before D-Day.
The History Hit YouTube team was along for the ride in the Armour and Embarkation convoy, and we had set ourselves one simple goal.
Our challenge today is to find some of the biggest, some of the rarest and some of the most impressive vehicles of the Second World War.
This is Monster Vehicles of World War II.
As D-Day approached in June 1944, Allied military planners needed to be sure that they had the vehicles to meet every conceivable challenge on the continent. Reconnaissance, recovery, transport and combat vehicles would all need to amass on the south coast of England in their thousands.
As we showed up at base camp in the village of Broadmayne, one of the original marshalling areas used before Operation Overlord, the convoy was minutes away from leaving. We had to find a ride, and quickly. Luckily, John Comber, who owned a Diamond T wrecker at the back of the queue, let us hop on board. And before we knew it, we had set off, rolling through the peaceful lanes of Dorset.
So we're travelling down these absolutely beautiful country lanes in Dorset at the moment, and these haven't changed since the summer of 1944 really. This is exactly the scene that would have greeted soldiers heading down towards the south coast, ready for the D-Day landings. How many vehicles do you think we've got behind us, Luke?
I mean, there's roughly 70 to 80 vehicles here, and the scale of this is already incredible. So you just imagine, what, 50,000 vehicles were deployed for D-Day. You've got jeeps, you've got tanks, trucks, everything's here. And this site that you see behind me, this is what soldiers would have seen back in 1944. It's just incredible.
And we always think about the men, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers who would have headed across to the Normandy beaches, but you've got to think about the planning, the number of vehicles that would have been required, the thousands, millions of tons of supplies that would have been needed as well. And it's quite a contrast seeing these lovely kind of green fields around us, just absolutely full of machinery at the moment.
It's quite a hard thing to put into words when you're sat on top of this truck and you see the convoy of vehicles behind you. You can imagine as a soldier before D-Day, the scale of the operation, you would have felt almost, not invincible, but you would have felt very, very confident, certainly, seeing how many people were involved. This was a multi-nation effort, and yeah, you feel very powerful.
The convoy would be travelling from the original D5 camp in Broadmayne 12 miles to Bovington Tank Museum. Next, the convoy would head to a nearby military training area, where these original vehicles would be put through their paces. Then it was on to Dorchester, where members of the public would get to see the vehicles up close, before we returned to base camp in the evening.
But before we reached our first checkpoint, we had an obstacle to overcome.
We're about to go across quite a deep looking ford. Fortunately, these vehicles are built for all terrain, so should be okay. Could be quite bumpy though.
I think it'll handle it.
We've got a little vehicle that, I don't know if it's stuck or maybe it's just chilling out. We'd offer to lend a hand, but Convoy needs to keep rolling.
Our first pit stop in Moreton Forest allowed us to get a proper bird's eye view of the convoy, an appreciation of the scale of the operation, and an opportunity to scout out some monster vehicles.
But with only time to make a few inquiries, we were already on the road again.
So the vehicle earlier that got stuck in the water has managed to get out. Good news, it's definitely suited to this kind of terrain. That must have been quite a challenge to get out of that. Oh, gosh.
Luke clearly wasn't as suited to the terrain as the vehicles, but luckily for him, we were soon at the Tank Museum in Bovington. Here we could get a better view of some of the incredibly rare vehicles on display, but we also needed to find ourselves another lift.
So we just took a quick pit stop at Bovington Tank Museum, and we've since switched rides, haven't we, Luke?
We have. We are now in an M3A1 Halftrack. These guys have very kindly given us a lift, and we're heading to a military training facility where we're going to put some of these World War II vehicles to the test. This Halftrack actually appeared in the film Fury, so it's got some Hollywood credentials.
Looking forward to it.
As we approached the training ground, I was able to find out more about what a half-track actually did.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Halftrack itself? Like how was this vehicle used in the Second World War?
This vehicle would have been used very much to basically not only transport troops forward, but basically get them to like the forward edge of the battle area. So this being an M3A1, I call it the gunship.
Okay.
Because it's got the 50 on the front, two 30s on the side. It could also have another machine gun on the rear.
Right, okay.
And the idea would be to basically get the troops as close as possible to the forward edge of the battle area. Basically, they would debus and then complete the final bounds, while at the same time getting mutual fire support from this vehicle. So you could say this is like an earlier version of an IFV, infantry fighting vehicle.
Got it.
And it was time for our new half-track to be put to the ultimate test on the military training ground. To put it simply, we had no idea what was about to hit us.
That'll be good, thank you. Whoa. So we're just going through the training area in this half-track, and I'll tell you what, it's very dusty. It's just a whole cloud of dust. This thing can go 40 miles per hour. And as you can probably tell, there's dust everywhere. Woo!
Kind of hard to keep our eyes open at the moment, going through the dust here. I think I'd rather be in a tank right now.
Feeling like we'd entered the North African desert rather than a field in Dorset, we were about to enter a drag race with two other half-tracks.
We're about to see what the Halftrack can do. Gonna open up the throttle. This thing can travel about 40 miles an hour. No bumps on this road, fortunately, but it can go pretty fast.
Brace yourself.
Literally dusting ourselves down after that half-track race, we had another opportunity to do some more scouting. After a quick glimpse at some of the monster vehicles we intended to check out later, the convoy was already preparing to set off again.
This time, we were heading to the town of Dorchester, where we were told to expect something of a hero's welcome.
Luke obviously thinks that he's a conquering US general, entering Dorchester here, waving to people.
They've all got their phones. No more waving, it's all phones now.
With the vehicles lined up along the main high street, it was time to get up close and personal with our monster vehicle candidates. It did seem, however, that we'd have to compete with what seemed like the entire population of the town. But it didn't take long before my eyes were drawn to a vehicle we'd met earlier in the day.
So we're here, all the vehicles from the convoy have all parked up in Dorchester, very lively atmosphere. Now I'm here with Richard. Now when I saw this vehicle I had to stop by. Can you tell me first of all what it's called and what it would have been used for in the Second World War?
Okay, so it's part of the Royal Artillery, and every regiment had a detachment of 5 or 6 of these 6-pounders.
Okay.
And a Loyd. So this is a 6-pound anti-tank gun.
Yep.
Okay, and it was pulled by this vehicle here, which is called a Loyd carrier towing. Okay.
Yep. Were a lot of these made? Because I haven't really seen any of these vehicles in the sort of archive and the footage.
Okay, yep, there was 26,000 made.
Okay.
And there's 22 left in the world.
Wow.
All right.
So very rare now.
In fact, both the gun, the 6-pounder gun, and the anti-tank tractor are both quite rare. Very lightly armoured.
Yeah. Okay.
They weren't designed to be in front. They were just designed to drop this down. The crew would open up. They'd either dug in, or they would. It's a quick firing. So when it recoils, it ejects its own shell, and the other person can put the shell straight in.
Right, okay.
Okay.
It's a very quick,
very
fast
quick.
action.
Drop it, take the tank out, hitch up,
Yep.
get out.
Now speaking of lightly armoured, how fast can this thing travel?
30 mile an hour.
30 miles an hour, okay.
It's powered by a V8 flathead, Canadian, about 85 horsepower, which, to be honest, is still underpowered.
Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about this engine if we just come over here?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about this thing right here?
This is the typical flathead, very well used in all sorts of applications.
Yeah.
And to be honest, you can still get parts for those today. I mean, they were still used by Ford,
Right, okay.
and the British made them as well.
Now, do you know any significant battles or operations that these sort of vehicles would have been used in during the Second World War?
Oh gosh, most of them,
Yeah, okay.
with the British involved. Yeah, Hill 112.
Okay, yeah.
They would have been used in part of the armoured group for going towards Arnhem.
Okay.
They would have been, they would all over.
Mainly in Europe, also in Africa perhaps as well?
Africa, yep, they were used in Africa. In fact, the 6-pounder was first released in Africa against the Germans, and then they followed right the way through to Italy.
Italy, okay. And how many people could fit in this vehicle?
This particular one is a 2-man, but it would have another vehicle, okay, a spare one, no gun, which would have another 4 crew in it, and it would have all extra ammunition for backup.
Right, okay. So very much a utility sort of.
Yes.
Reinforcements.
They used them in several applications. They don't, I mean, like I said, this is an anti-tank tractor.
Yeah.
They used them for cable laying, for the Royal Signals. They used them for armoured personal carriers, and they used them for start-ups, so starting up tanks. So they had a big pack of batteries and then a dynamo, basically jump-starting tanks or the planes.
It's a very, very important vehicle. Do you reckon we would be able to go inside and have a look?
You can have a look, yep.
Okay. So the first thing I noticed, is this a Sten gun?
No, it's a Bren gun Mark 1. It's part of its tools. The crew would have had a Bren gun for protection, Mark 1. They'd also, I haven't got it on there, I've got one, but it would have had a 2-inch mortar. The only armour on this
I was going to ask about the
front.
armour. Right.
Front and side up to there. All the rest of it is tin, and the floor's tin.
So it's not going to stop a
no. If you went over
if
you went over a mine or anything, you would just be blown to smithereens.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
So slightly vulnerable in certain areas, but still a very, very valuable vehicle that was used widely throughout the Second World War.
That's right. And just to give them added protection, you had 25-gallon petrol tanks either side.
So I want those catching fire.
Not a bad start with the Loyd carrier, but this was a competition where size mattered. And I'd found a pretty big truck pulling a pretty big gun.
So this one is a very interesting piece of equipment. This is a long tong. This is one of the largest Allied artillery pieces that could be towed by a vehicle in one piece. I mean, as you can see, it's pretty massive. 155mm shells this would have fired, and it's towed by this gigantic truck. This is the Mack NO, manufactured by Mack Vehicles in America, and Steve, the owner, has allowed us to get in and have a look. All right, let's try and get in. You can tell by just how high this is. This is really a monstrous World War II vehicle. So, built by Mack Motors in the USA. This specific vehicle was built in 1944, ready for action in Europe. After the Second World War, it was purchased by the British Army, and then apparently it was a breakdown truck for many years before being purchased by Steve at auction. But as you can see, this is a pretty huge vehicle, very American if I can say that. And if you look up here, there's not too many vehicles in this convoy that are taller than this one. Yeah.
Much to the amusement of our cameraman Ollie, getting into the truck wasn't as easy as it looked.
So as we said, this truck's specifically designed to carry this artillery piece, and a massive artillery piece it is. This truck, 11.6 litre petrol engine. Apparently only about 6,000 were built because they weren't quite as popular as the diesel engine trucks. But it's certainly a monster vehicle of World War II. I wonder what Luke's got to compete with this.
Well, I've seen two medium to small sized vehicles already, but this right here, this vehicle took my eye straight away. This really is a monster vehicle of World War II, and I'm here with Max. Max, thank you for showing us this vehicle. Can you tell me a bit about, first of all, what it's called and when this would have been used, what for?
It's a M26 Pacific Dragon Wagon. The nickname is Dragon Wagon. It was used for armoured tank recovery. Also, the recovery gear folds down and carries a trailer, so you can recover the tank, and then you put the trailer back on and put the tank onto the trailer. It's an armoured cab, so it could recover under fire.
So it has quite a lot of armour, right?
Yeah,
it's heavily armoured.
It's not thick armour.
No.
It's just for rifle bullets and snipers and stuff, not for tank rounds. You know, it's just a thinly armoured cab.
And how heavy do you reckon this is?
It's 21 tonne. The truck's 21 tonne.
Wow.
I think the trailers are 20 tonne. And then you can normally put a 45 tonne tank on, but we have photos of 65 tonne German tanks on, and no problem at all. So.
That's incredible. So what theatres of war would this be used
mainly
in? What operations?
They were used in Europe. You know, they went in D-Day. They were used right through to the end of the war. Used for tank recovery, and then when the Rhine crossing came, they were used for moving landing craft up to the Rhine crossing, and used right after the war for clearing up all the battlefields. Used right into the Korean War. Wow. And then they went on to a different truck. And
this is it's very rare. I haven't really seen this on any footage. How rare is this vehicle, if you can put it into context?
Well, there was 750 built, I think.
Okay, so not that many realistically at all.
Not when there was 66,000 Shermans built.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 armoured cab restored ones in the UK.
Only 2 of these left?
Yeah.
And
one
you've
at
got
Bedford
one of them?
and one here. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And would you be able to show me inside?
Yeah, no problem.
Vehicle? Right, first thing I'd say is the amount of space in it. It's quite spacious compared to some of the other vehicles we've been in so far.
Yeah, it's a 7-man crew.
Okay.
There's 7 men to deal with all the recovery equipment.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff's very heavy, so that's why they had a 7-man crew. So yeah, you have a lot of space. Engines in the middle.
Engines in the middle, okay. What kind of engine?
It's a Hull Scott 440, 240 horsepower, 18 litre straight 6 petrol.
Can't imagine it's cheap to fill this thing up.
No, it does about 1 mile to the gallon. So.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate monster utility vehicle of World War II, basically.
It's the largest petrol engine truck ever built.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's up here?
That's anti-aircraft.
Okay.
.5 Browning 50 cal, known as, but that is on a ring mount, and they put it on a lot of vehicles, same as this one here. It's just for anti-aircraft.
And what was the process of restoration like?
Horrendous.
Horrendous. But you've got one of the only 2 surviving Dragon wagons in the UK. That must feel pretty special.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Right, on top of this beast that is the Dragon wagon with a 50 cal machine gun, it's got everything. It's got armour, it's got an anti-aircraft gun, it's got space. I tell you what, Louie's got his work cut out, because I think this is the winner of the monster vehicle of World War II challenge.
An admittedly remarkable vehicle, but I reckoned I'd found the Dragon Wagon some stiff competition.
So I'm here with Jim, and Jim's going to show us the high-speed tractor. Now this is an unusual looking vehicle. What can you tell us about it? What was it used for?
It's a M4 high-speed tractor built in 1944 by Alice Chalmers. It's built to take a crew of 11 to tow the gun, which is behind it. There's only about 4 or 5 in the country. The gun is totally unique. There's only 1 in the country. It's still live, and as far as I know, it's only 1 in private hands in Europe.
Right.
The gun, which is towing, is a 90mm anti-aircraft gun. These tractors were designed to pull that gun and the long tom, which is at the back of the queue.
Right. Okay. Huge artillery piece up there.
So the ammunition box would be a different shape to take the bigger shells, but this box is correct for the gun. And they were used from Normandy, from D-Day all the way through, and then during the Ardennes Battle of the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, these guns were used for anti-tank support.
Okay. I know it says that the Luftwaffe's Nightmare on the front, so there's the anti-aircraft element there, right?
That's right, yeah. I found a picture of one of these, which the picture was dated the 4th of June 1944, and I've copied it exactly.
And what makes this a tractor? Is it these basically?
Yeah, I mean it's called an M4 high-speed tractor. That's its name. It'll do about 35 miles an hour, but it obviously it's on tracks because of trying to pull something in muddy ground. You need a track vehicle rather than like a big wheeled vehicle.
Got it. Can we take a look inside?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, it's not easy to get into.
None of them seem to be today.
Right.
No problems getting in this time, at least I'd had some practice.
Alright, so Jim, we're in the cab here.
Yep.
Talk us through what we've got here. Is this a hard vehicle to drive?
No, it's fairly simple. You've obviously got 2 sticks to steer the vehicle. If you want to turn right, you pull the right stick back. If you want to go left, you pull the left stick back. And if you want to stop, you pull them both back.
Got it. Sounds fairly simple.
It's very, very easy to operate. You've got this switch there, which is the ignition switch.
Nice. Powerful sounding engine.
So that's in low now. Then you let your foot off the clutch. It's got a torque converter. So when I rev the engine, if I revved it now, it would start to move forward.
Right, okay.
And then once you've got up to about 7-8 miles an hour, you put your foot back on the clutch, pop it into high, which is down there, and then you've got a second gear.
So presumably this vehicle is going to have to be extremely powerful. If it's pulling one of those long tom artillery pieces.
Yeah, it's got a Walkinshaw engine. It's about 210 horsepower.
Okay.
So
top speed. I'm guessing it's not the fastest.
About 35.
No, that's not too bad for.
You would struggle to get that with the gun on the back, I think.
Yeah.
I've done about 30 in it with the gun on the back.
Another impressive armoured vehicle restored to roadworthiness, but our time was up and our candidates for best monster vehicle locked in. Time to hitch one more ride on our way back to base camp.
So we've very generously been given another lift in another half-track. This time it's a British half-track. tell that because we've got a Sten gun down here, a Bren gun on the side, and we've got a mortar up front. And we are heading back to Broadmayne campsite right now. But the question is, me or Luke, who has won? Who has found the best monster vehicle of World War II?
After a long day on the road, we had returned to Broadmayne, where 3,000 American troops had been stationed for 6 months before D-Day, to once again marvel at the range of World War II vehicles that had been assembled.
But we couldn't leave the village without a stop at the local pub for our challenge debrief.
So we've had an absolutely epic day with the World War II convoy. 55 vehicles apparently, 20 motorcycles, one of the largest gatherings of World War II vehicles probably in this country in the last decade. But the important question really is, what was the biggest monster vehicle that we saw today?
I think there's, well, out of the contenders, I mean, for me there's one that sticks in my mind, but if I go through the two that I saw two sort of similar vehicles in terms of what they did. They were utility vehicles. One was the Loyd carrier, and that was so unique. I've never seen anything like it. I think he said there were perhaps 75 left in the UK. Could carry anti-tank guns. It had an incredible engine. It was just so unique looking, very British in design. But then the second vehicle I saw, the Dragon Wagon, I mean, that for me has got to be the #1 contender. It was absolutely massive.
It was certainly bigger than the Loyd carrier.
It was the biggest, not only from the outside but also inside. So much space. It could rescue tanks. It had its own anti-aircraft guns, and yeah, it was an absolute spectacle.
It was an impressive vehicle. It was an impressive vehicle, and I had the Mack NO pulling the long tom. I thought that was an pretty impressive truck, to be honest. I mean, the long tom, the largest artillery piece that could be towed in one go. But not great armour. It wasn't exactly something that was going to be going into the front lines and defending itself. And then there was the high-speed tractor, which I really, really liked. So this is another vehicle that carried its own, carried an artillery piece behind it, would drag it along, but it had its armour. It had a machine gun on top. It was a useful and versatile vehicle. However, I think I might have to hand it to the M26 Dragon Wagon.
What I was going to say, I think the Dragon Wagon was similar to the second vehicle you saw, but just slightly better in every single department. But I think one thing we can say is all the vehicles we saw today were not ones you tend to see on the archive and the
very
footage.
Rare vehicles.
Very rare vehicles. I think the Dragon Wagon was one of only 2 left in the UK. So these are all incredibly rare vehicles. But listen, if you're going to hand it to the Dragon Wagon, I won't complain.
I think on this occasion we're going to give it to Luke and say the Dragon Wagon won. Not that Luke had anything to do with it.
Is that a win for me? Is that a win for me? I'll count it.
It was well found, a good spot from you, and yes, you can take this challenge. Well done.
Brilliant. Cheers, Lee.
Cheers.
Cheers. This is Monster Vehicles of World War II.
Welcome to the History Hit YouTube channel. Hope you enjoyed that video.
And if you'd like to see more videos where we attempt to try and bring history to life, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Cheers guys, see you soon.